The chandelier above the dining table shimmered like frozen fire as Ethan Cole adjusted his worn jacket and lowered his gaze. Crystal glasses clinked softly around him, silverware placed with perfect symmetry. Laughter drifted from the far end of the room, light, effortless, expensive. Across the table sat the Whitmore family. Billionaires. Old money. The kind of people who never checked prices, only people. Ethan kept his voice humble, his posture small. He let them believe he was just a struggling single father who barely fit in this room. No one noticed his daughter, Lily gripping his hand tightly under the table. No one suspected the truth he carried so quietly. Before we go any further, tell me, where are you watching from right now? A busy city, a quiet town, maybe somewhere the world rarely looks. Drop your city or country below. It's amazing how far one story can travel. Mrs. Whitmore smiled politely, eyes skimming Ethan's scuffed shoes before lifting back to his face. So, Ethan, she said, swirling her wine, what line of work are you in these days? Ethan hesitated just long enough. Consulting? Small contracts. Nothing impressive. Mr. Whitmore chuckled. Must be hard, raising a child on that. Lily stiffened. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. We manage, he said simply. Across the table, their son Andrew leaned back in his chair. Kids need stability, he said casually. Structure, resources. Ethan nodded. They also need presence. Andrew smiled dimly, unconvinced. Dinner continued like that, questions wrapped in judgment, curiosity dressed as courtesy. Ethan answered everything with humility. He let them underestimate him. He had learned long ago that people revealed more of themselves when they believed you were beneath them. At one point, Lily whispered, Daddy, do they not like us? Ethan leaned close. They don't know us yet. After dessert, Mrs. Whitmore clapped her hands lightly. Well, this was enlightening, she said. Andrew, walk them out. Andrew stood, already checking his phone. In the hallway, Andrew slowed. Listen, he said quietly, voice sharp now. My parents like to help. Selectively. Don't expect anything from this. Ethan met his eyes calmly. I never do. Andrew scoffed and walked away. Outside, the night air felt colder but cleaner. Lily finally spoke. You didn't tell them about your real work. Ethan knelt in front of her, brushing hair from her face. Sometimes people listen better when they think you're simple. The next morning, Lily's school called. There had been a funding issue. A program was being cut. The Whitmore Foundation's name came up, its decision final. Lily would lose her scholarship. Ethan closed his eyes slowly. That evening, he sat alone at his desk, opening his laptop. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He logged into an account he rarely used, the one tied to companies, mergers, quiet decisions made far above dining tables. If you were in Ethan's place, judged, dismissed, underestimated, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if this moment stirred something in you, tap like to show that dignity still matters. Ethan made one call. Just one. The following afternoon, the Whitmore estate buzzed with tension. Phones rang. Advisors whispered. News broke of a massive acquisition, one that shifted control of several philanthropic boards overnight. By evening, Mrs. Whitmore's assistant called Ethan directly. Her voice trembled. Mr. Cole, we didn't realize, Ethan interrupted gently. You didn't ask. Silence. Lily's scholarship was reinstated within the hour, expanded, permanent. And tomorrow night, the Whitmores would be attending a charity gala. Where Ethan Cole would be speaking. Not as a guest. As the keynote. And as the truth began to surface, one thing became clear. Ethan had never pretended to be poor. Because he was ashamed. He did it to see who people really were. The gala hall smelled like polished marble and restraint. Ethan arrived early, not because he was nervous, but because he wanted Lily to see the room before it filled with faces that judged first and listened later. Chandeliers glowed overhead, soft gold light spilling across silk dresses and tailored suits. Lily's eyes widened. "Daddy," she whispered, "this place looks like a castle." Ethan smiled. "Castles can be quiet places too." They took their seats near the stage. Murmurs rippled when people recognized Ethan's name on the program. Ethan Cole, managing partner. Some leaned forward. Others frowned, trying to reconcile the man from the dinner table with the name, now printed and elegant typed up, the Whitmores. Arrived last. Mrs. Whitmore's smile faltered the moment she saw Ethan. Andrew stopped mid-step, color draining from his face. Mr. Whitmore adjusted his tie too tightly. Ethan stood as they approached, not out of obligation, but courtesy. "Good evening," he said calmly. Mrs. Whitmore forced a laugh. "Mr. Cole, we didn't expect." "I know," Ethan replied gently. "That's the point." They took their seats, stiff and silent. As the lights dimmed, Lily leaned closer. "Are you mad at them?" Ethan shook his head. "I'm honest with them." When Ethan stepped onto the stage, the room fell quiet. He didn't begin with numbers or titles. He began with a memory. "I used to believe that if I spoke softly," he said, voice steady, "the world would listen more carefully." A few smiles, a few nods. "I was wrong. The world listens when it thinks you're powerless. That's when people show you who they really are." He paused, letting the words settle. "Years ago, after my wife died, I walked into rooms like this one with my head down. Not because I lacked confidence, but because I was measuring character." The Whitmores stared straight ahead. "I learned something important," Ethan continued. "We talk a lot about generosity, but generosity without respect is just control." A hush spread through the hall. Ethan looked down at Lily, then back up. "My daughter once asked me why some people decide who matters based on shoes or jobs, or how loudly they speak." He smiled faintly. "I told her the truth, because some people have never had to listen." Applause didn't come right away. When it did, it was slow then full. Backstage, Andrew approached, hands clenched. "You embarrassed us." Ethan met his eyes. "No, I let you hear yourselves." Mrs. Whitmore stepped forward, voice quieter now. "Why didn't you say who you were?" Ethan answered simply, "Because I needed to know who you were." That night, as the city lights blurred past their car window, Lily broke the silence. "You weren't pretending," she said thoughtfully. "You were testing?" Ethan nodded. "For kindness." She smiled. "Did they pass?" Ethan didn't answer right away. At home, Ethan opened an old photo album, one he rarely touched. Lily asleep on the couch. He flipped through pictures of hospital rooms, small apartments, nights that smelled like instant noodles, and hope stretched thin. He remembered the years when people helped quietly, teachers who slipped extra snacks into Lily's bag, neighbors who watched her for free, strangers who never asked for credit. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. The next morning, Ethan's phone rang again. Mrs. Whitmore's assistant. "The foundation would like to meet," she said carefully, "to realign values." Ethan smiled to himself. "Bring everyone," he said, "including the ones who didn't speak." At the meeting, Ethan listened more than he spoke. He let discomfort do its work. He let silence teach. By the end, policies shifted. Boards diversified. Scholarships expanded, not just for Lily, but for hundreds of children who'd never sat at a table like that one. Outside, Andrew lingered. "You didn't have to do all this." Ethan turned. "I did it for the kids who never get asked who they are." Andrew looked down. "I didn't know." Ethan nodded. "Most people don't, until it matters." That evening, Lily ran to him with a letter in her hand. "Daddy, they're keeping my program and adding science labs." Ethan hugged her, eyes closing. He hadn't pretended to be poor to trick anyone. He'd done it to protect something fragile, truth. And now that truth had cracked the room open. But redemption doesn't end with exposure. It begins with what people choose to do after they've been seen. And that choice was about to be tested. The meeting room overlooked the city like it owned it. Floor to ceiling glass, leather chairs that didn't creak, coffee served without being asked. Ethan took the seat offered to him and waited. He always waited. Silence, he'd learned, invited honesty. The Whitmore board filed in one by one. Mrs. Whitmore sat straighter than usual. Andrew avoided Ethan's eyes. A few trustees whispered, still recalibrating their understanding of who he was. Ethan didn't open with demands. He opened with a story. "Before my wife died," he said quietly, "we planned our lives down to the smallest detail. Careers, schools, vacations we never took. Then one night rewrote everything." He paused, fingers resting flat on the table. "After that, I learned how quickly people decide what you're worth when you stop looking comfortable." A trustee cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss funding priorities." "Yes," Ethan agreed. "And priorities are just values wearing numbers." He slid a single folder across the table. Inside were anonymized profiles, students who'd lost programs mid-year, families who'd qualified by every metric except one, visibility, acted poor and naive because it's the fastest way to see how systems behave when they think no one powerful is watching. Ethan said, "What I saw wasn't evil. It was indifference." Mrs. Whitmore's jaw tightened. "We didn't intend." "I know," Ethan said gently. "Intent doesn't build ramps. Decisions do." He asked for nothing personal. No seat, no title. Only a pilot transparent criteria, independent review, student advocates with veto power. A structure that listened. The room argued, carefully, respectfully, and for the first time, Ethan noticed something shift. They weren't debating him. They were debating the mirror he'd set in front of them. Outside the room, Lily sat with a foundation coordinator, coloring planets in careful rings. Ethan caught her smile through the glass and felt the familiar ache-love, mixed with the memory of how close he'd come to losing ground he could never get back. Have you ever had someone help you and no one else would, right when you were running out of strength? Right, yes, and tell me their name. Sometimes gratitude deserves to be spoken. When the meeting ended, the vote passed narrowly. Enough to begin. Andrew lingered again, this time uncertain rather than defensive. You really did grow up like that? He asked. The apartment. The buses. Ethan nodded. I grew up learning to listen. Andrew exhaled. I didn't. Not too late, Ethan replied. The weeks that followed were quieter than the gala, but louder where it mattered. Emails from principals. Calls from parents. Data that told a different story when it was finally allowed to exist. Lily's program expanded into neighboring schools. Tutors hired locally. Meals funded without paperwork that humiliated. Ethan kept his distance. He refused press. Declined interviews. Power worked best, he believed, when it didn't need applause. At home, Lily taped a new drawing to the fridge, 3 stick figures holding hands. A speech bubble above them that read, listen first. One night, she asked, Daddy, why didn't you tell them who you were? Ethan washed the dishes slowly, because sometimes the truth needs a quiet door to walk through. She nodded, satisfied. Then the letter arrived. An invitation, another gala, another speech. This time hosted by a different family. Old money again. Curious, cautious, watching how the Whitmores adjusted. Ethan folded the letter once and set it aside. He didn't want another stage. But he understood something now. When you reveal the truth, you inherit responsibility. Not to perform, but to protect the change you started. He called Mrs. Whitmore that evening. "I'll come," he said. "On one condition, yes?" she asked. "No introductions," Ethan replied. "Let the work speak first." At the event, he sat near the back with Lily, listened as the foundation announced the pilot's early results. Applause came, not thunderous earned. Afterward, a woman approached, eyes bright. "My son stayed in his program," she said. "Because of the changes." Ethan smiled. "Because of people who listened." On the drive home, Lily leaned against him. "Did they pass this time?" Ethan thought about Andrew's quieter questions, Mrs. Whitmore's new policies, the trustees who'd stopped whispering. "Some did," he said. "Some are still learning." "That's okay," Lily replied. "Learning takes time." Ethan looked at her in the rearview mirror and felt the story bend, not toward exposure, but toward repair. Because acting poor and naive hadn't been a trick. It had been a test. And now the real measure wasn't who felt shocked, but who chose to change when the truth stayed. The pilot program didn't feel like a victory. It felt fragile. Ethan understood that better than anyone. Real change, the kind that lasted, didn't announce itself with applause. It crept in quietly and could just as easily slip away if no one guarded it. So he guarded it, not with press releases or speeches, but with presence. He started visiting schools quietly. No entourage. No advance notice. He sat in the back of classrooms, listened to teachers explain what worked and what didn't. He watched kids who used to shrink into themselves now raise hands more often. He noticed which systems still failed the quiet ones. Lily came with him when she could. She sat on library floors, helped younger kids read, asked teachers questions that adults often skipped. "Why do they stop the program in the middle of the year?" she asked once at the teacher's side. "Because money decides before people do." Lily nodded like that made sense, and then frowned like it shouldn't. At the Whitmore Foundation, tension remained. Not open resistance. Something worse. Polite discomfort. A trustee questioned costs during a review. Another suggested metrics that conveniently ignored students who struggled quietly. Andrew stayed silent through most of it, eyes fixed on his notes. Ethan listened. After the meeting, Andrew followed him into the hallway. "They think you're trying to shame them," he said. Ethan stopped. "I'm trying to protect kids." Andrew hesitated. "That's not how they see it." Ethan nodded. "Then we keep going until it is." At home, Lily overheard a call Ethan took late one night. Voices raised. Words like budget caps and donor comfort floated through the apartment. When he hung up, Lily sat beside him. "Are they mad again?" Ethan smiled tiredly. "Some people get uncomfortable when mirrors stay in the room." She leaned her head against his arm. "You're not going to stop, right?" "No," he said softly. "But I'm going to do it the right way." The next week, Ethan invited the foundation board not to a meeting room, but to a school cafeteria. Plastic tables, cracked tiles, the smell of pizza and cleaning solution. No microphones, no slides. Just stories. A counselor spoke about choosing which kids got help when funding ran short. A principal explained how paperwork filtered out families who needed help most. A parent stood, hands shaking, and said, "My son stayed in school because someone listened." The room stayed quiet. This time Andrew spoke. "I didn't know," he said, voice tight. "I should have asked sooner." Ethan met his eyes. "You can ask now. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." The shift wasn't dramatic. It was real. Policies changed wording. Review panels added community voices. Timelines adjusted so programs couldn't manage mid-year. Small levers moved that made big systems behave differently. Ethan stayed careful. He kept his distance from praise. He made sure credit went nowhere specific. One afternoon, a journalist found him anyway. "Why did you act poor?" she asked, recorder poised. Why pretend to be naive? Ethan considered the question. Because people reveal their values when they think nothing's at stake. She frowned. And now? Now, he said, everything is. That evening, Lily showed him a note from school. Field trip approved. Program extended. She danced in the kitchen, laughing. Ethan watched her and felt the old ache soften, not disappear, but ease. Then the call came. A donor threatened to pull funding unless the pilot returned to traditional criteria. The board scheduled an emergency session. Pressure mounted. Whispers returned. Ethan arrived early and sat alone. Hands folded. This wasn't about exposure anymore. It was about whether the people who'd been shocked would choose courage or comfort. As the doors opened and the room filled. Ethan knew the next hour would decide whether the truth they'd seen would be remembered or quietly undone. The emergency session began without ceremony. No coffee, no small talk. Just tension settling into the room like dust no one wanted to acknowledge. The donor's representative spoke first, smooth voice, careful words. "We respect the intent of the pilot," he said, "but our concern is sustainability. These changes make some donors uncomfortable." Ethan leaned back, hands folded, listening. Mrs. Whitmore glanced at him, then back at the table. Uncomfortable how? They feel the foundation is drifting from excellence toward sentiment. The word landed hard. Ethan finally spoke. "Excellence without access is decoration," he said calmly. "It looks good from far away and serves very few." A trustee frowned. "That's easy to say when you're not responsible for the funding." Ethan met her gaze. "I am," the room stilled. Andrew looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Ethan took a breath, not dramatic, not rehearsed. "The acquisition you read about last month? The one that stabilized 3 education portfolios?" He paused. "That was me." Murmurs rippled. "I've been the silent partner behind several donors this foundation relies on," Ethan continued. "Not to control outcomes, to protect them." Mrs. Whitmore's hand tightened on her pen. "You funded us while testing us?" "I supported children," Ethan corrected gently. "And I watched how decisions were made when no one thought it mattered." The donor's representative shifted uncomfortably. "This feels manipulative." Ethan shook his head. "It's transparency delayed for safety." Silence followed thick, undeniable. "I acted poor and naive," Ethan said, "because power changes behavior. I needed to know how the system treated people when power wasn't visible." Andrew swallowed. "So the scholarships? The labs? All funded," Ethan said, "regardless of this vote." The room exhaled at once. Mrs. Whitmore spoke, voice unsteady. "Why tell us now?" "Because now you have to choose," Ethan replied. "Not me. The values you keep when the truth is no longer quiet." The vote was taken again. This time, it wasn't narrow. It was decisive. Afterward, Andrew approached Ethan slowly. "You could have crushed us," he said. Ethan nodded. "That was never the goal. Then what was?" Ethan looked past him, out the window toward the city. "To make sure the next Lily doesn't have to sit quietly while adults debate her worth. If that moment hit you hard, leave a... Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't." That night, Ethan walked home instead of driving. The city felt different when you let it breathe around you. He thought about the years he'd shrunk himself to measure others, about how heavy truth could be and how necessary. At home, Lily was waiting up, wrapped in a blanket on the couch. "Did it work?" she asked sleepily. Ethan sat beside her. Yes, she smiled. Good. She didn't ask how. Or why. She trusted the outcome. As Lily drifted back to sleep, Ethan understood something with quiet clarity. Revealing the truth wasn't the climax. Living with it was. Because now that everyone knew who he was, the easy part, being underestimated, was over. What remained was harder. To keep choosing humility when pride would be justified. To keep listening when people finally listened to him. And to forgive those who needed time to unlearn what comfort had taught them. The truth had shocked everyone. What they did next would decide if it changed anything at all. The city didn't applaud Ethan's decision. It barely noticed. And that was exactly how real change usually looked. In the weeks after the emergency session, emails slowed. Meetings shortened. The tension that once filled rooms softened to something quieter respect mixed with caution. People no longer spoke around Ethan. They spoke to him. Some apologized. Most didn't. Ethan didn't ask them to. He focused on the work. The pilot program expanded carefully, deliberately. Oversight committees added teachers, parents, even 2 students. Budgets were published openly. Decisions were explained, not hidden behind phrases like donor preference or strategic alignment. Andrew began showing up early to meetings. One afternoon, he stayed late. I keep thinking about that dinner, Andrew said, leaning against the conference table. How easily I dismissed you. Ethan didn't respond right away. Andrew continued, voice lower. I don't know how to make that right. Ethan met his eyes. You don't make it right by undoing the past. You make it right by not repeating it. Andrew nodded slowly. Outside of work, life remained simple. Lily still complained about homework, still forgot her lunchbox, still asked questions that stopped adults mid-sentence. One evening, while Ethan helped her with a science project, she asked, Do you hate the Whitmores? Ethan paused, then shook his head. No, but they were mean, Lily said, frowning. They were careless, Ethan corrected gently. There's a difference. She thought about that. Can people change from careless? Yes, he said, if they're willing to be uncomfortable. A few days later, an envelope arrived at the apartment, handwritten, from Mrs. Whitmore. Inside was a short note, no excuses, no defenses. I mistook polish for character and comfort for goodness. I'm learning. Thank you for not humiliating us when you could have. Ethan read it once, then placed it in a drawer. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. That night, he stood alone on the balcony, city lights blinking like quiet witnesses. He thought about the years he'd stayed small on purpose, about how pretending to be poor had protected him, but also cost him. There were moments now when anger rose uninvited, when he remembered Andrew's smirk, Mrs. Whitmore's polite dismissal, the way Lily's future had been weighed like a line item. Forgiveness wasn't automatic. It was work. Be honest, could you forgive people who looked down on you before they knew the truth? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break something inside you. The real test came sooner than Ethan expected. A major donor, one who had voted against the pilot, requested a private meeting. His assistant stressed urgency. Ethan agreed. The donor arrived alone, expensive watch, careful smile. I'll be direct, he said. I was wrong. Ethan waited. I judged you, the man continued. And I judged those kids. I don't like who that makes me. Silence stretched. I can't undo my vote, the donor said. But I want to support the work now, quietly. Ethan studied him. Why quietly? Because I don't deserve credit. Ethan nodded. Then we can talk. They did. The donation came through a week later unannounced and restricted. Change didn't always come with apologies. Sometimes it arrived with humility. At school, Lily's teacher pulled Ethan aside. She's been helping other kids more, she said, especially the ones who struggle. Ethan smiled. She's paying attention? One afternoon, Lily asked if she could invite Andrew to her science fair. Ethan blinked. Andrew? He said he likes rockets, she said, and he asked questions. Ethan considered it, then nodded. Okay. At the fair, Andrew stood awkwardly beside Ethan, clapping too loudly when Lily presented. He looked different, less certain, more present. Afterward, he said quietly, "Thank you for letting me be here." Ethan replied, "Thank you for showing up." As the day ended, Lily ran ahead laughing, her project tucked under her arm. Ethan watched her go, heart full and steady. Forgiveness, he realized, wasn't about letting people off the hook. It was about refusing to carry the weight of their worst moments forever. And as the sun dipped low, painting the schoolyard gold, Ethan knew the hardest part was coming next. Not defending the truth, but trusting it enough to let others carry it too. Ethan didn't expect the invitation to come from Lily. She brought it home folded twice, edges worn soft by small hands. "There's a community dinner," she said. "The foundation people are coming. They asked families to share stories." Ethan read the flyer. Listening night, no speeches. No podium, just tables and time. "Do you want to go?" he asked. Lily shrugged. "I think so. Some kids don't like those rooms." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then we'll sit where it's quieter." The gym smelled like coffee and folding chairs. Posters lined the walls, photos of students, short quotes handwritten beneath them. Not polished, honest. Andrew spotted them first and waved, uncertain but hopeful. Mrs. Whitmore followed, slower, eyes scanning the room as if learning how to enter it without owning it. They sat together not out of strategy but habit. The stories came in pieces. A teacher spoke about a boy who stopped skipping class once meals were guaranteed. A parent shared how paperwork once felt like a wall designed to test dignity. A student stood, voice shaking, and said, "I didn't know adults could change their minds." Applause followed, then quiet. Ethan listened. Lily leaned against him, tracing circles on his sleeve. When it was his turn, Ethan didn't stand. He stayed seated. "I acted poor and naive," he said calmly, "because I wanted to understand how systems behave when they think no one powerful is watching." He looked around the room. What mattered wasn't who felt embarrassed. It was who stayed after. Andrew nodded, jaw tight. Mrs. Whitmore folded her hands. Afterward, outside under string lights, Andrew approached again. "I keep replaying that dinner," he said. "I don't know if I can forgive myself." Ethan considered him. "Guilt can teach," he said. "If you let it." Andrew swallowed. "Do you forgive me?" The question hung there, simple, heavy. Be honest, could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. Ethan answered quietly, "I'm choosing to." Andrew exhaled, something uncoiling. "Thank you." Mrs. Whitmore stepped forward, eyes shining. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "I only want to earn trust." Ethan nodded. "Then keep showing up." In the weeks that followed, the foundation announced a permanent shift codified criteria. Student advocates with binding votes, transparency built into timelines. Not headlines, policy. The work deepened. Ethan noticed something else too. People began to defer to him, to wait for his approval. Power, once revealed, had a way of rearranging rooms. He pushed back gently. "Ask the teachers," he'd say. "Ask the students." One afternoon, a board member joked, "Careful, he'll pretend to be poor again." Ethan smiled, but didn't laugh. "No need," he said. "We're listening now." At home, Lily practiced her presentation for a citywide science showcase. Andrew volunteered to help build the display, awkward at first, then earnest. They laughed over crooked foam boards and glue mishaps. "Did you know," Lily said to Andrew, "that pretending helps you learn?" Andrew smiled. "I'm learning." The night before the showcase, Ethan sat on the balcony, city humming below. The old anger rose quieter now, but present. Forgiveness wasn't a finish line. It was maintenance. He thought of the kids whose programs had nearly vanished, of the parents who never got calls returned, of how easily comfort justified harm. Forgiveness didn't erase that. It made space to prevent it from happening again. At the showcase, Lily stood tall, voice clear. Judges asked questions. She answered thoughtfully, crediting teachers, friends, and people who listened. When her name was called for recognition, not first place, but something better, community impact, Ethan felt his throat tighten. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep with the certificate in her lap. "You did good," Ethan whispered, knowing she couldn't hear. The phone rang the next morning. A coalition of foundations wanted Ethan to advise formally this time. Not a donor, not a shadow, a role with limits and accountability. Ethan paused. This was the edge of the cliff he'd been approaching all along. Step forward and the work could scale. Step back and the system might drift again. He asked for a day. That evening, he told Lily about the offer. "It means more meetings," he said. Less quiet. Lily thought for a moment. "Will you still listen?" Ethan smiled. "That's the job." She nodded. "Then do it." Ethan accepted, not because he wanted the seat, but because forgiveness, once chosen, asks for something harder than mercy. It asks for stewardship. And as the city woke around them, Ethan understood the truth he'd been circling since that first dinner. Pretending had revealed character. Forgiving would shape the future. And now, the work would test whether change could last. When no one was pretending anymore, the role didn't come with applause. No announcement banner. No congratulatory dinner. Just a small office, shared calendars, and a responsibility that weighed heavier than any title Ethan had ever held. He showed up anyway, early mornings. Long listening sessions. Meetings where voices competed and truth hid in the corners. Ethan learned quickly that real power wasn't deciding. It was slowing rooms down long enough for the right voices to be heard. He insisted Lily come with him sometimes. Not to meetings, but to the spaces around them. School halls, community centers, cafeterias where decisions echoed louder than boardrooms ever could. "Why do you bring her?" A donor asked once, politely curious. Ethan answered simply, "So I don't forget who this is for." Not everyone welcomed the change. A few partners quietly withdrew. Others stayed but resisted, dragging feet where they once strode confidently. Progress, Ethan learned, didn't break evenly. It cracked slow and uneven until light found its way, and Andrew changed the most. He stopped posturing in meetings, asked questions without defending himself, listened when parents spoke. Once, after a particularly tense session, he sat beside Ethan in the hallway. "I used to think leadership meant being certain," Andrew said. "Now I think it means being quiet." Ethan nodded. "Quiet enough to hear what you've been avoiding." At home, life stayed grounded. Lily still lost socks, still groaned about homework, still laughed too loudly at dinner. Ethan protected those rhythms fiercely. No late calls after bedtime. No meetings on weekends unless absolutely necessary. One night, Lily asked, "Are people nicer now that they know who you are?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Some are," he said. "Some are trying. Some are still learning." She smiled. "Learning is okay." The coalition launched its first citywide initiative quietly. No ribbon cutting. Just results. Attendance up. Dropout rates down. Teachers staying longer. Parents calling back Dot at a small community event. A woman approached Ethan with tears in her eyes. "My son didn't disappear this year," she said. "Thank you." Ethan shook his head. "Thank you for staying." As weeks turned into months, the story of the poor single dad faded into something softer, less shocking, more instructive. It became a reminder passed around rooms. Check your assumptions. Listen first. Ethan never corrected people when they retold it imperfectly, because the point wasn't accuracy. It was impact. One evening, as sunset painted the city amber, Ethan and Lily sat on the balcony. The noise below felt distant, manageable. "Daddy," Lily said, "do you think they'll forget again?" Ethan pulled her close. "Some will," he said honestly. "That's why we build things that remember." She leaned into him. "I'm glad you didn't stay quiet forever." Ethan smiled. "Me too. If you believe love, kindness, and patience still win, even when the world moves slowly, comment amen. Let's fill this moment with hope. Someone scrolling right now might need to see it and keep going." That night, Ethan wrote a short note to the coalition. Not a report. A reminder. We don't measure success by how impressed people are. We measure it by who no longer has to pretend to belong. He closed the laptop and stood by the window, watching lights blink on across the city homes, full of small stories that rarely made headlines. He thought back to that first dinner. The way he lowered his eyes, let judgment pass over him, chosen quiet as a tool. He didn't regret it because pretending had taught him something essential, that dignity doesn't need to announce itself, and hope doesn't need permission. Now, with systems slowly reshaped and people learning to listen, Ethan felt something he hadn't expected at the start of all this. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of purpose. And as the night settled, he knew the final test wasn't whether the truth shocked people, but whether it taught them how to stay human. After the surprise faded, the years that followed didn't look dramatic from the outside. No headlines chased Ethan anymore. No whispers followed him into rooms. The shock had faded, replaced by something quieter and more demanding: consistency. And consistency, Ethan learned, was where change either lived or died. He stayed in the role long enough to make himself unnecessary. That was always the goal. Systems that relied on one person's integrity were just another kind of fragility. Policies hardened into practice. Student advocates became permanent. Funding cycles locked protections in place so programs couldn't vanish when attention drifted. The work became boring in the best way. At home, Lily grew. Not fast, not suddenly, just steadily. Middle school brought new questions, louder opinions, a sharper sense of fairness. She argued her points with logic now, not just instinct. She volunteered without being asked. She corrected adults gently when they spoke over quieter kids. One evening, she came home upset. "A boy at school said programs like mine are charity," she said. "Like we should be grateful and quiet." Ethan listened without interrupting. "What did you say?" he asked. "I said dignity isn't charity," Lily replied. "And listening isn't weakness." Ethan smiled, pride warm and grounded. "That sounds right." On the anniversary of the gala, the night everything changed, Ethan received an invitation. Not to speak, not to be honored, just to attend. He almost declined. Then he saw the note at the bottom. Students will be presenting. So he went. The room looked the same. The people didn't. Andrew spotted him across the hall and walked over. No hesitation now. "We're still learning," he said. "But we haven't stopped." Ethan nodded. "That's all anyone can ask." Mrs. Whitmore joined them, older, softer around the eyes. "I used to think leadership was certainty," she said. "Now I think it's accountability." Ethan met her gaze. "And humility." She smiled. Especially that. When the presentations began, Lily stood among a small group of students. She spoke clearly, confidently, not about her own success, but about structures that worked when adults stayed present. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous. It was sincere. Afterward, as people filtered out, a man approached Ethan hesitantly. "I judged you once," he said. "I thought your silence meant you didn't belong." Ethan studied him. "And now?" "And now," the man said, "I understand it meant you were listening." Ethan nodded. Listening changes everything. Outside, the air was cool. Lily walked beside him, taller now, steps sure. "Do you ever wish you'd told them the truth sooner?" she asked. Ethan thought for a moment. "No," he said, "because the truth wasn't just who I was. It was who they were when they didn't know." She considered that. So pretending wasn't lying. "It was patience," Ethan replied. "With purpose." They reached the car, pausing as city lights flickered on. Ethan looked at his daughter, at the future she carried without knowing the weight it once held. "If this story moved you," he might have said to a room like this, "don't scroll past quietly. Tap like not for me, but for the ones who were underestimated and chose kindness anyway. One click can be your way of saying, 'I saw you. You mattered.'" Lily opened the car door and smiled. "Ready to go home?" Ethan nodded. Yeah, home wasn't a place that proved anything anymore. It was a place that remembered. As they drove, Ethan reflected on the arc that had brought them here, not triumph, not revenge, not exposure, but responsibility carried forward. He had acted poor and naive not to deceive, but to reveal. He had forgiven not to forget, but to build. And the truth that once shocked a room had done its quiet work, changing how people listened, how systems responded, how a child learned to speak. In the end, the lesson wasn't about wealth or power. It was this: character shows itself when it thinks no one important is watching.